So, good evening everyone. Kumusta ang buhay?
Evening po, attorney.
Doing good po.
Okay lang po.
Perfect. Mm. Uh, this could have been face to face. So maganda sana face to face para we get to interact outside of the screen that we're seeing, pero unfortunately that's not possible. So we'll try to make do with what we have now, no. And this is good kasi everyone from all over the Philippines can see us. Yeah, so pwede tayong mag-meet kahit na malayo. But yung drawback nun mas mahirap ang interaction, no? Give me a minute, ko lang, ayusin ko lang yung setup ko and we'll start na. Okay? Sige. Before we start, can you please type dun sa chat kung from what province kayo? Or if you're from NCR, what city or municipality kayo? Okay, so I'm back at magbabasa tayo ng comments dito. Sige, simulan sa umpisa. We have someone from Misamis Oriental, Rizal, Quezon City, Cagayan de Oro, Pampanga, Cebu, Bulacan, Pangasinan. Malapit ka lang. Where exactly in Pangasinan are you, Mr. Modelo? Zamboanga City, may Quezon, Cebu, Manila, Batangas, Legazpi, Albay, Davao Region, Davao del Norte, Lanao del Norte, Tanawan Leyte, Pampanga, Southern Leyte, Quezon City, Eastern Samar, Dumaguete, Batangas, Cauayan City, Isabela, Tarlac, Batangas. We're going national. Okay. Zamboanga del Sur, Camiguin, Santa Rosa, Laguna, Rizal, Antipolo, NCR, Bulacan, Washington, Aklan. New Washington, Aklan. Okay. Cool. Sige. Cavite, Makati, Mandaluyong, Bulacan, Camiguin, Nueva Ecija, Manila, Ilocos Sur, Nueva Ecija, Rizal, Isabela, Quezon City, Muntinlupa, San Pablo, Laguna, San Fernando, Pampanga, Cavite, Negros Oriental, Mindanao, Cagayan de Oro pala. Sorry. Dagupan, kapitbahay lang kita. Laguna, Alaminos, lagi ako dyan. Taguig, Alaminos, Pangasinan, Taguig, Davao, Occidental Mindoro, NCR, Pampanga, Muntinlupa, Masbate. Hindi ko nababasahin lahat, ang dami pala. Infanta. Okay. Baguio City, galing lang ako dyan nung linggo. Masbate, Dagupan, kapitbahay lang kita. Quezon City, Pangasinan. I was expecting really na mas maraming Pangasinan dito because this project really started in Pangasinan, pero I'm glad na maraming taga-ibang lugar, particularly Batangas, Laguna, around those areas, and in Mindanao actually, in Cotabato marami rin. In Negros, Zamboanga del Sur, Zamboanga Peninsula, may Cagayan Valley pa tayo, so literally from tip to tip tayo ng Pilipinas. So good evening everyone. So let's start with our program para we can entertain your questions later. So with me is Ivan Bravo. Ivan, mag-ano ka naman dyan. Show your face. Unmute ka para mag-ano dito sa una.
Sorry, hello, good evening.
So Ivan is my protege for a long time already, no? Starting first year college ka, and he's now in law school, and he perhaps later he could share with you some experiences with law school, no? Maririnig niyo sa kanya yung mga good things and not so good things about law school. Everything in law school is good naman, no? Relatively. Depende na lang sa'yo kung paano mo titignan yan. Do you see those as failures or opportunities? That's up to you. No? So, before I start uh, before I start with this program, I'll introduce myself. I'm John Angel Bautista from Binmali, Pangasinan. I passed the bar in I passed the 2018 bar, but I was admitted in the bar in 2019. I've been doing Batas for Everyone for what 2 years already, and I'm really glad that in those 2 years, marami tayong followers from a lot of ano from all over the Philippines, and that helps us uh, that helps us parang spread yung information, the knowledge that we have of law, no? And I hope to after this program will be another program which I hope will be the basis for us to create sort of like a group among law students and aspiring law students in the Philippines, no? This is a good opportunity for us to learn from each other, to uh, get knowledge from other people, not just me, and to enrich the discourse of law in the Philippines. So let me share my screen for a while. Teka lang, medyo ano tayo ha? Medyo malat kasi nag-concert. No, I'm kidding, of course. Pero, sige, let's try to share screen. Okay, can you see the screen, everyone?
Yes po.
Yes po.
Okay, good.
Yes po, attorney.
So this is our law school preparatory program, and tentatively I entitled this Angat Buhay Law School Preparatory Program because this is after all inspired by our outgoing vice president and our parang uh, Totga president, no? Lenny Robredo. And hindi naman masyadong obvious sa damit ko today. Pero the thing is, this program is aimed at helping students, incoming law students, to be acquainted early with what is the law, on how to approach legal problems, on what things to and what things to that one should know before before going to law school, no? The thing with law school is that the preparation starts even before you enter law school, no? Wait lang ha, maraming nagpapa-admit. So the thing is the thing with law school is you are not you cannot enter over prepared, because there's no such thing as over prepared in law school, no? In law school you will encounter a lot of things, and uh, hopefully this course will give you enough to proceed to start with your readings when you finally get to law school, no? So for this week, for week 1, we are interested in understanding we will be introducing the law for course 1, and for course 2 we will be discussing human rights. This is weird because I intended your human rights to be course 3, because uh, we need to understand the government first before we can grasp fully the concept of human rights, ano. Pero sige, let's try to deal with this na lang, no? So before we begin, let me have some reminders. Okay? So for each week, readings per course will be given. For last week, nagbigay na ako ng for course 1 at course 2, but those are just theoretical readings. The others are what we'll be discussing here are the more technical, if I may say that, aspects of things, no. So synchronous classes, which is this one, will be held every 7 p.m. days. So at the end of the program, top performers will be selected for intermediate and advanced law lessons. So from the pool of people that we have now, pipili ako ng mga tao around mga siguro 25 to 30 who will join us doon sa intermediate and advanced law lessons. But that will be determined by the exam that you will have after the eight courses that you will go through for the entire 4 weeks. So in this meeting, the participants are muted by default. So if you notice when you entered, nakamute kayong lahat, and I suggest that wait, nawala ba ako? Okay. I suggest that you turn off your videos as well. Especially if your signal is if the meeting is breaking on your end. And we already unfortunately we can do this getting to know you portion kasi masyado marami. Pero I'm glad that we are so many in here, ang daming taga. And I have hi Christopher J. He's my friend on Facebook. So yeah. Yan, marami tayong mga taga-ibang lugar dito. Marawi, we also have someone from Marawi, Isabela, Negros Oriental, Masbate, Makati, Apayao. Okay? So we have a lot of people here. So, yan. So that is our getting to know you portion of the evening. So I'll go directly dun sa lesson, no? For us to be warmed up na. So I know that everyone is excited. Excited na ba lahat na matuto? Please thumbs up kung if you believe so. Kung excited na kayo. All right. So we have in fairness sa participation dito 61 thumbs up na siya. Agad-agad. So, yeah. So let's start then. Before we of course our first course is on introduction. Before we care to discuss what the other lessons about law, of course we will still have to define what it is, no? And siguro this will be a valuable lesson to all of you na one of the reliable basis for defining concepts in law is the reliable resource rather is Black's Law Dictionary, and this is how Black's Law Dictionary defines law. No? Law is a body of rules of action or conduct prescribed by a controlling authority and have binding legal force. That which must be obeyed and followed by citizens subject to sanctions or legal consequences is a law. Okay? So here, if we will dissect this definition of law na sinasabi natin, meron tayong naka-highlight na areas dyan, no? But of course, before we break it down into its components, let us be clear that we are talking here of state law. Ang pinag-usapan natin dito ay state law. We're not talking here of moral law. We're not talking here of physical laws. We're not talking here of other forms of laws, no? Yung state law na tinatawag natin. Okay? So, first is it is promulgated by legitimate authority, meaning there must be a body or a person which has legitimacy na nagpo-promulgate nitong batas na to. in our case, in the Philippines, the laws are promulgated by Congress. Si Congress ang mag-promulgate ng mga batas only to be signed by the president and executed by him, no? So in the Philippines, meron tayong bicameral Congress which is composed of the House of Senate and House of Representatives, no? So yun yung controlling authority na tinatawag natin. Having binding legal force. Ibig sabihin, these are obligatory. If you are a citizen of a certain country, you are bound by its laws, no? So kung ikaw ay citizen ng isang bansa, or in the case of criminal laws, if you are in that country, the laws take effect sa'yo, no? Nagkakaroon yan ng effect sa'yo. Meron siyang binding force, no? And it is also, that's why we call it obligatory, no? And it requires common observance and benefits. Ideally, uh, it must be obeyed by everyone. Lahat ng tao kailangan sumusunod sa batas. And the benefits that we get from the law must also be everyone must get it, ano? Pero meron tayong concept ng valid classification which we'll be dealing with along the way, no? Pero yun, as in general, dapat lahat tayo nakaka-receive ng benefits and all of us must observe. Ito yung tinatawag natin na meron tayong rights at meron tayong obligations, no? So that is the concept of law that we are talking here. We are not really talking of other forms or other aspects of law, no? Well, sorry, I'm often distracted by yung mga nagpapa-admit. Anyway, so yan, that is our introduction, that is our definition of law. Now, we come now to the Constitution. So, of course, maganda ring ano sa inyo, i-share that this is not common knowledge, no? More than I thought this is common knowledge, but it's not, no? So, meron tayong tinatawag na doctrine of constitutional supremacy. So, technically, the Constitution is also a law, no? Batas siya. But meron tayong tinatawag na doctrine of constitutional supremacy, which means that the Constitution is supreme. The Constitution is the highest form, highest law, or the highest law of the land, no? That means that all laws must abide by the Constitution. So ibig sabihin lahat ng mga batas na ipapasa ng Congress, ipapasa ng whoever is the legitimate authority, lahat ng batas na ipapasa ng legitimate authority na yon must conform with the Constitution. Dapat sumusunod siya sa Constitution or hindi niya sinasalungat yung Constitution. Otherwise, kung sumasalungat siya sa mga ideals, sumasalungat siya sa mga provisions ng Constitution, it is deemed to be unconstitutional. Siguro naririnig na rin naman natin yung narinig na natin yung idea ng unconstitutional, no? Kasi in several instances nagkaroon na tayo ng mga discussions in the media, sa Facebook sa Facebook, sa mga sa traditional media about yung mga unconstitutional na mga batas. Siguro pinaka-recently and pinaka-controversially is yung anti-terror law, no, that was already passed. And the verdict of the Constitution there is that while some provisions are unconstitutional, may mga ilan lang, no? I think it's just two minor provisions of the law. All the rest is constitutional as per the Constitution, as per the Supreme Court. So, ibig sabihin nun that the law, except for those that were repealed, for those that were declared unconstitutional, it follows yung ibang parts follow the Constitution. So, yun yung ibig sabihin ng constitutional supremacy. So, in the current version, sa current version ng Constitution natin, it is the 1987 Constitution that we're using, no? That one with 18 articles. Now, as you have read in Gatmaitan, that 1987 Constitution is our reaction to Marcos's regime, no? after the Marcos regime was toppled by the People Power Revolution, the first one, nagkaroon tayo ng 1987 Constitution. But before that, no, before the 1987 Constitution, meron tayong sort of a transitionary constitution, the 1986 Constitution, wherein for the meantime si President Cory took over, at yung constitution na yon, yung Freedom Constitution ng 1986 was used para to give way sa pag-create ng 1987 Constitution. No? So, practically, in the 1986 Constitution, tinanggal yung mga areas that may be prone to abuse. And then, eventually, in 1 year, natapos yung version ng 1987 Constitution and it became yung latest na Constitution. So far, there's no substantial amendment or revision to the 1987 Constitution yet. Okay? But, I don't know if this is something that we should think of right now, but our constitution can be amended or revised. So just like every law, kasi there is this precept na walang batas ang hindi pwedeng palitan. There's no law that cannot be changed. So even the constitution can be changed. It can be amended. By amended, we mean piecemeal, yung maliliit lang na provisions ng constitution that will not affect the government or that will not affect substantially the constitution, pwedeng i-amend. Pero revision of the constitution is yung mas malalaking portions. For example, if you want to install federalism sa Pilipinas, you need a revision kasi maraming matatamaan na provisions ng constitution at maraming mahalagang provisions ang matatamaan. So, either way, be it amended or revised, it requires ratification na tinatawag natin. So, the Congress will propose and then the people will vote on it. Pagbobotohan natin kung ipapasa ba natin yung Constitution o hindi. So, yan. Unlike yung ibang batas that can be repealed by Congress alone, by the vote of Congress alone, in the Constitution, kailangan ng tayong lahat ang boboto to either to pass it or to junk it. No? So that is the Constitution. Now, we proceed to how laws are made. Dito naman, we are not talking here of the Constitution. We are talking of just the regular laws that pass through Congress. So, why is IBP Bulacan chapter in here? Pero sige, let's try to accommodate that. Okay, so in the lawmaking process, the laws start off as proposed bills by legislators of either or both chambers. So, ibig sabihin yan, before it becomes a law, it starts with what we call a bill, no? Proposed bill ng isa or a group of senators and Congress and legislators, no? So, magsisimula sila na magpo-file ng bill. And this bill will be debated upon, discussed in Congress. So, yun. First, yung batas starts with the committee. Magsisimula yan sa committee. And then pag na-approve ng committee, first, second, third reading, and then it passes through the next chamber, which is Senate or House of Representatives, depende sa kung saan nanggaling yung batas. And there will be a separate reading in that chamber. So for example, if a law originated in House of Representatives, there will be readings, separate 3 readings in the House of Representatives, and there will be 3 readings as well doon sa Senate until if they were able to come up with if they were able to pass yung the same version, they will pass it to the president for signing, no? But what if both chambers started what if both chambers parang proposed a legislation? What if pareho sila, for example, they are talking about child marriage? Merong version si House of Representatives, merong version si House of Senate, no? So hindi pwede, so magkakaroon ng duplication ng task kapag pareho from both houses meron silang sariling version. That is when a bicameral conference committee is that's when a bicameral conference committee is created, no? Kumbaga, this is a committee formed by senators and legislators from the House of Representatives or representatives rather. At sila na yung gagawa ng version that is acceptable to both houses para mabilis. Hindi siya ikot ng ikot sa mga chambers. So that's basically that is in brief the process of making laws in the Philippines. So bitin yung discussion, but we'll be discussing more of this once we get to the question and answer portion. No? So for course 2, we have your human rights. So we will be discussing human rights, but in the context of the Philippines at the very least, no, we have these human rights in order to prevent yung abuses from the government, in order to prevent abuses from others. So we have these human rights are these rights we have simply because we exist as human beings. Every one of us, lahat tayong nandito has human rights. Lahat tayo, even those who are incarcerated, yung mga nakakulong, basically lahat ng taong pinanganak, lahat ng taong nag-exist have human rights. May human rights tayong lahat. And that is simply because we exist as human rights. Okay? They are not granted or revoked by others, by any state. Ibig sabihin, yung human rights natin, hindi yan ginagrant ng state, therefore hindi niya yan pwedeng i-revoke, no? Just to illustrate yung difference, kung kumuha ka ng lisensya, for example, that is a privilege given to you by the state to drive, no? Yung lisensyang driver's license. Okay. Since the state granted it, the state can very well take it from you, no? But human rights, no. They are not granted, therefore they cannot be revoked by any state. They are there regardless of where you are, regardless of who you are, regardless of your gender, sex, nationality, ethnic origin, color, religion, language, or any other status. So, yan. So, this is inherent in all of us. The moment that you're born, you have these human rights with you. Okay. These human rights range from the most fundamental, dun sa mga pinakamahalaga na karapatan natin, to those that make life worth living. So, it doesn't really need to be the most fundamental right, but if parang yung sa 30 rights na nakalista sa Universal Declaration of Human Rights, it includes even those that make life worth living, no? Kasi what's the point of living if it's not worth living at all, di ba? So also, everyone's entitled to these rights. Lahat tayo entitled sa mga karapatan na to without discrimination. This is important, no? Yung mga karapatan natin under the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, they should not discriminate. No, every one of us is entitled to these human rights. Okay, so here are the basic principles of human rights that we need to take into consideration, that we need to understand bago natin mag-grasp fully yung idea ng human rights. First is human rights are universal. What does this mean? Ibig sabihin, all of us, regardless of our personal circumstances and initial conditions, are equally entitled to human rights. Lahat tayo, mayaman, mahirap, lalaki, babae, LGBT, maputi, maitim, ano ba? Mayaman, mahirap, all of us, we are entitled to the same human rights as others. Okay? Next is our human rights are inalienable. So our rights cannot and should not be taken away except in specific situations and in accordance with due process. So hindi pwedeng tanggalin yung mga human rights natin, no? Except, there are exceptions naman, except in specific situations and in accordance to due process. May mga specific situations lang that needs, parang pwedeng tanggalin yung human rights mo, but it must be in accordance with due process, no? So that is inalienable. So if you have questions pala, you can type them in sa chat, aside from the questions that you already submit. Okay. So they are indivisible and interdependent, no? Here we say that one set of rights, yung civil and political rights natin, and our economic, social, and cultural rights cannot be fully enjoyed without the other. So kung kahit meron kang civil and political rights, kung wala kang economic, social, and cultural rights, hindi mo mai-enjoy yan. And your human rights is cannot be fully enjoyed. Diba? You cannot fully enjoy your human rights. And finally, it is equal and non-discriminatory. It is equal in a sense na we are all considered to have equal dignity and rights. And therefore, we must also have the same, there must be no discrimination. No? So, yeah. That is, these are the basic principles of human rights that we need to take into account. Now, what is the duty of the state? Now, what is the duty of states? This is where the government comes in. No? The government must do something with your human rights. There are three things na dapat niyang gawin. Una, the state must respect your rights. Ibig sabihin ng respect is the state must refrain from interfering with or curtailing the enjoyment of human rights. The state must not interfere when you are merely enjoying your human rights. No? Dapat hindi nila pinapakialaman yung human rights natin. Second, hindi lang basta hindi ka pakikialaman, but the state also needs to protect your human rights. States must protect individuals and groups against human rights abuses. So, individual man or group, regardless of who that may be, the state must protect your human rights, no? Yun yung sinasabi dito. And finally, hindi lang basta tayo po protektahan, hindi lang irerespeto yung human rights natin, but they must also fulfill their obligations. So, the state must take positive action to facilitate the enjoyment of basic human rights. Hindi lang poprotektahan, hindi lang irerespeto, pero gagawa ng paraan ang estado, the state will do something for you to fully enjoy your human rights. No? Paano mangyayari yon? Bibigyan ng mag-aalat ng resources for you to enjoy your human rights, gagawa ng mga batas that will allow you to enjoy your human rights. Not just protect, not just respect, but also fulfill. So yun yung duty ng state sa inyo. Okay, we have classifications of freedoms and rights here. Simple lang naman yan. When it comes to di ba sinabi ko sa inyo kanina, yung Universal Declaration of Human Rights contains all 30 basic human rights that is universal to every signatory, or basically everyone, no, in the international community. So 30 yun. So this can be classified as either positive freedoms, negative freedoms, civil or political rights, economic, social, and cultural rights. So when it comes to positive freedom, ito yung mga pwede nating gawin out of our own free will, like our freedom to move, freedom from belief, freedom of belief. We are free to believe what we want, no? And freedom of opinion and information. We are free to make opinions, and we are free to access information that is vital to us. Meron naman tayong tinatawag na negative freedoms. Ito naman, kung yung sa positive freedom ay you acting on your will, yung sa negative freedom naman, you having the right not to be stopped or not to be restrained by the state. No? Example is freedom from discrimination, freedom from slavery, freedom from arbitrary arrest and exile. So hindi ka pwedeng i-enslave because that is your human right. Hindi ka pwedeng i-arrest arbitrarily. Hindi ka pwedeng arrestuin lang basta-basta lang, no? And hindi ka pwedeng paalisin sa kung nasan ka without due process, no? So those are negative freedoms. Now, there is also what we call yung classification civil and political rights. When we say civil and political rights, these are yung right to life, liberty, personal security, right to fair and public hearing, right to be considered innocent until proven guilty. Sa economic, social, and cultural rights naman, these are things that involve that involves more of your collective rights, no? More of yung sa ano mo sa labor, uh, culture, your social life, no? Yung for example is yung right to desirable work and to join trade unions, right to social security, right to participate in the cultural life of the community. So there are several classifications of these human rights, but these are the more important ones that you need to consider, no? Uh, so, what are the basic texts that we need to read, we need to understand when we talk of human rights? Ano ba yung mga dapat nating binabasa and ano ba yung mga sources kasi ng ating human rights? Well, sorry. Sandali lang. Okay. Now, first and foremost, of course, yung nabanggit ko na kanina, yung Universal Declaration of Human Rights, the 30 basic rights that you have, nakalista yan. You can search it, maraming reference about that. So, also, yung International Convention on Civil and Political Rights and yung International Convention on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights. So, these are just reiterations of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, pero they are packaged differently, no? Ano ba? Kumbaga, nakaseparate diyan yung sa civil and political rights and yung economic, social, and cultural. When in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, it is listed as one. Okay. Why did the Universal Declaration of Human Rights happen? Okay. Nagkaroon ng there were as you may know in your world history, nagkaroon ng anong World War One and then World War Two. So, yung World War One triggered actually the creation of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights kasi ano ba ang gagawin natin in a world in a situation na country to country nang naglalaban. Excuse me. Ano bang gagawin natin kasi it would seem na yung mga wars natin are ruthless, walang rules, no? There's no rule in wars, no? And the thing is, civilians and military alike namamatay in those situations. That is why that is why this Universal Declaration of Human Rights was created, no? And later yung international conventions na dalawa and after that mga conventions na specific to certain needs. For example, yung conventions on elimination of discrimination against women, yung mga conventions on the rights of the child, mga ganyan. Specific na siya to a certain group or a certain phenomenon, no? Marami itong conventions na to. So, understanding international human rights is really not a walk in the park, no? Medyo mahirap talaga yung subject ng human rights kasi you'll need to discuss a lot of things. In the Philippines, sa Philippine context, meron tayong tinatawag na Philippine Bill of Rights. No? Meron tayong Bill of Rights sa Pilipinas which can be found in our Constitution in Article 3. Pero that does not mean that the various articles do not contain some form of rights. Meron din sa ibang articles, but parang pinaka-ano yun, isa sa mga pinaka-highlight ng Bill of Rights in our Constitution is yung Article 3. So nakalagay doon, we have 22 sections na that lists yung mga articles yung mga that reiterates yung mga human rights natin. Okay? So other articles of the Constitution, just like what I told you, and other Philippine laws can provide certain rights. Pero yung universal can be seen in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. We are signatory to the UN. So we are signatory to this declaration. So we are covered by this. So I think that is enough. That is sufficient for our introduction for the two courses. Let's take a 10-minute break and Sorry, 5 na lang, okay lang ba? Para ano, para give us enough time to parang sapat naman na yung 5 minutes to parang health break lang. And later, after the 10-minute 5-minute health break, we'll go back to answer some of your questions that you posted sa Google Form natin. So please stay connected na lang para hindi tayo mahirapan to admit later. Okay? So 5-minute health break. All right. So here are your questions. Medyo marami na. Sagutin natin. First, does the prevailing constitution guarantee that the Supreme Court will never again succumb to the authority of the President of the state in the future? And how? Okay. This question is not merely legal, no? Hindi lang ito legal, but this is also this is to some extent also political. Does the Constitution guarantee that the Supreme Court will never succumb to the authority of the President of the state in the future? We can never say. No, this is me answering not only as a lawyer but also as a political science graduate. I can't really call myself a political analyst or anything like that. No, so there's never a guarantee that the Supreme Court will not succumb to the authority of the President anytime. No, there's really no guarantee. The president can do everything in his power to, for example, to declare a dictatorship, and yung physical control, merely the physical control of the ano of the legislature and the Supreme Court alone can do a lot already. How much more kapag talagang captive siya, no, walang opposition. That is also dangerous, no? Kaya nga dapat in a strong democracy dapat there is a strong opposition, because without that the powers are left unchecked. So there's really the Constitution really doesn't, while there are protections guaranteed under the Constitution, it's not really absolute, no? Hindi really, parang hindi siya assurance of any sort that there will be parang convergence of these powers. Next, does the presidential appointment of the judiciary impede the doctrine of separation of powers? We can answer this in a legal and common sense manner, no? Legally, legally dapat it does not impede the doctrine of separation of powers, but because the exercise of the power is separate naman, no? The Supreme Court acts differently, acts in a different manner, no? Parang does the Supreme Court does one thing, the president does another thing, and there is separation of power there. Malinaw naman yon in our constitution, no? However, common sensically, no, kapag if a person kasi is appointed by another person, especially if it's not through merit, hindi siya merit based kundi based on friendship or quid pro quo, or your I scratch your back, you scratch mine, talagang hindi mo there will be some sort of blending of these powers, because there will be some justices, no, I'm not really talking about that. There will be instances wherein the judiciary may be affected by if that is the arrangement. So that is my common sense answer. But legally, no, dapat hindi sila dapat, it does not affect in any way yung separation of powers. But we will actually, this is weird kasi the separation of powers is discussed in course 2. Pero sige, I'll answer na lang din ito. Okay, next. Can the preamble be amended? Yeah, sure. Wala namang doon. Of course, amending the preamble is a weird thing to do, no? It's not really a provision of the Constitution. But if somehow the priorities of the state changed, The preamble can be amended, but definitely there is supposed to be there must be an amendment of the other provisions, no? Or the entire constitution as a whole. Kasi 'di ba yung preamble is the parang setting of ideals ng isang constitution. And if that's gone, parang if you change that, you will have to change some provisions of the constitution as well. Okay, next. Since 1997 Constitution aims to block and control the power of strongman rule, can the 1987 Constitution be repealed if the government wants to establish a dictatorship constitution? Yes, of course. Gaya nga ng sabi natin kanina, it can be amended or repealed, but, okay, and there's a big but there. There must be, the people must agree. May butuhan. Which gets me to the point na, what if, they use social media and disinformation to convince the people to change the type of government, for example, and the constitution itself, no? Sige, mag-agree tayo sa changes na to ng constitution because this is good. That's
Justices.
no?
I mean, no, I'm really not talking about that. There will be
Is someone
justices.
recording the discussion? Please please don't disseminate. I'll be sharing naman the recording anyway. So yeah. Yes, the answer is yes. Unfortunately, that is possible. And but of course, it has to pass through the people. And if history is any indication, resistant ang tao sa changes in the constitution, but social media can be a game changer. So that's my point. That's how I see it. No? Are there any grounds for constitutional modification or amendments, and who can propose them? Basically, the constitution can be amended for various reasons. No, wala namang specific na grounds or for modifying it or for amending it. No, pero siguro some would want to change the constitution because it is no longer parang hindi na niya nasasagot yung bagong panahon, no? Hindi na siya tugma sa bagong panahon. It's no longer apt for the new generation. Siguro that is one reason to change the constitution, or it could be entirely a personal agenda. And if the people agree, that there's your change, no? So watch out. Yun lang. What's the importance of updating the constitution? Yun nga, para mag-fit siya sa needs ng kasalukuyan, no? There is, if we think that there's a need to change the constitution to update it, pwede naman. Mahalaga rin yun, no? Na mabago. Pero we also need to take into account who will do that, no? So yan, I'll leave that to you. Does the Almighty God written in the preamble only refer to Catholic God? If so, does the Constitution discriminate? I don't think that is the intention of the framers of the Constitution, to limit it to just the Catholic religion. No, whoever God may be, hindi yun yung intention. And of course, the Constitution is not designed to discriminate religions. So yeah, why is it hard to realize a constitutional reform? This is a tricky question, no? Ang hirap nga naman talaga to make a constitutional reform because the reason why we have the 1987 Constitution in the first place is to prevent abuses, no? And just the idea of changing it, parang it leaves something sa mga tao na, teka, bakit nila binabago yan? What is their agenda? And that makes it hard for anyone really to push for constitutional reforms. The Duterte administration tried hard to do this, no? In fact, I think kung hindi ako nagkakamali, this is both state and non-state initiative there is a state announced initiative to change the constitution during the Duterte administration, but that never happened. In spite of the supermajority, ha, if I may add, supermajority yon dati. PDP Laban really uh, managed to get a supermajority of Congress, pero wala pa rin. Hindi na i-push ang constitutional reform. I don't know what happened there, pero one can only speculate. No? So next, does the president have the power to revise the constitution? No. It is the Congress who can do that. Of course, siguro with the nudge of the president, pero technically, it is the Congress, depende kung Constitutional Assembly or Constitutional Convention ang gagawin, and the people, really. So yung president advisory lang or ano, parang he will do everything to nudge the people to vote for this change, pero he himself cannot change the constitution. Given the revisions done to our constitution, would it still be possible to draft a new one that would favor the current administration? Gaya nga ng sabi ko kanina, very well, yes. No? Yes, that is possible. Okay, next. Can the people power constitution be possibly acknowledged even up to this day? This question really is a non-question, but I just want to point out that this is our current constitution, the 1987 constitution. This is the people power constitution. Okay? Siguro if you're referring to the freedom constitution, no, of course, that is already repealed. But if you're talking about the people power constitution, which is this one, yes, it is still acknowledged. The thing is, kahit gaano katagal yan, if hindi siya napalitan, that still remains in effect. So, okay, ito naman more on the practical, ito na. Do I have to study the different versions of the Constitution? Nasa sayo yan. But you are only required to study the current one. But it's good to know, kasi in previous bar exams, there were questions about comparisons of constitutions, no? Merong differentiate the 1935, 1987, 1935, 1973, and 1987 Constitution. There was that question, and even I can answer that if I took that bar exam. But yeah, my advice is so far sa ngayon hindi pa, pero if you're dedicated enough, sure, why not, di ba? Okay, is law a good basis for ethics? Now, the thing is, the law is supposed to the law is a different realm from ethics, pero the law borrows from ethics. Okay, so maybe it's the reverse, no? Ethics should be a good basis for law, pero is the law a good basis for ethics? We try to codify ethics by making them into laws, pero in this configuration, mas dapat na basis yung ethics ng law. Okay. Is the assumption of the late Cory Aquino to the presidency a de facto one, since no elections were done to put her in power? There is a Supreme Court decision. There is a Supreme Court decision that says na that the Cory administration is a legitimate one, an extra constitutional parang it's an extra constitutional measure to install legitimate power in government, no? And it's valid for its that's the point of that decision, no? Next, what's the significance of a constitutional convention? A constitutional convention is one way of proposing an amendment or revision to the constitution. Let's say ganito yan. Meron dalawang paraan to propose changes to the constitution. First is through a constitutional convention, and second through constitutional assembly. Sa constitutional assembly, that's made purely of the Congress. Congress lang ang gagawa niyan. Sa constitutional convention, it is made of the Congress plus other experts in the field. They can invite people to help draft the constitution. And yun basically yung difference ng constitutional convention, constitutional assembly. Now, ano ang significance ng constitutional convention? It makes possible na ano, parang nagiging possible doon sa Constitutional Assembly na uh, a constitutional convention to propose changes. But again, after the proposal, meron pa tayong ratification by the people. So that is for course 1. For course 2, ito yung mga tanong. What are the most common human rights issues in the Philippines? Ano yung mga pinaka-common na human rights issues sa Philippines? So far, yung, of course, yung the EJK, marami actually, no? IP rights, ganyan, yung violation ng IP rights, environmental justice is one of the parang ano, more common na mga human rights issues. Yung killing ng lawyers, killing ng journalists, mga ganyan. Yung freedom of information natin, no? In a world full of disinformation, our our right to information is really skewed, no? Tapos yung freedom of the press, freedom of expression, ganyan. In recent times, lalo na ng COVID, no, maraming nakasuhan ng cyber libel for whatever reason, no, for criticizing the government, for criticizing certain public officials, mga ganyan. There were a lot of cases on those things. At it's really boggling, no, kung isipin. Do population control policies violate specific human rights whose rights must we carefully consider in the discussion of the matter? Population control policies are not really inherently human rights issues, no? They do not violate they do not violate specific human rights yet, no? And it's an ongoing debate whether abortion is a human rights issue or not, no? When does the right to life begin? That has been contended parang for several in several occasions already. So we don't know. We can't say for sure if this is an issue, no? Pero at least that is my answer if we are talking of the international scene. But at least in the Philippines, abortion is illegal, no? And that is that could understood as a human rights issue in the Philippines, but there's no consensus really in the international community on how to treat this. Okay, what is the most important human right? Siguro baka maalala natin kanina that these human rights cannot be enjoyed without the others, no? You cannot you cannot single out a single human right and say that this is the most important. You need to take it as a whole, because it is only when you take it as a whole that it makes sense, that it protects who needs to be protected, diba? Next, why do some people require special human rights? Human rights are universal, no? There's no such thing as special human rights, but maybe special entitlements, no? Parang special laws that protect their that protect their them from being for whatever reason, from violence, etc. Di ba parang I mentioned a while ago that the state has the duty to protect our human rights, right? And for example, yung sa women's rights, ito commonly, wala bang rights of men? Wala bang men's rights? Of course there are rights of men, but women's rights are particularly singled out, and meron silang specific protections from the state because they have historically been the most parang abused na of the genders, no? Yung mga babae, mga kababaihan. Sila yung binubugbog, etc. And that is of a massive scale, no? So there needs to be specific legislations that protect them. So yun. Okay, wait lang. So that is the reason why there's no such thing as special human rights, because human rights apply to all. Yun lang, there are specific laws that protect them because they need more protection than the others. Okay? So next, does an invitation by the police require a warrant? This is a very technical question, no? But there is a Supreme Court decision that says yung invitation by a police requires a warrant already because uh, parang ano yun eh, parang yun yung ginagamit na scapegoat, parang yun yung uh, ginagamit to, you know, to parang in substitute, parang para mas mapadali yung process, but that should not be the case. Okay, why are criminals and convicted suspects still covered by human rights even if they did something brutal? Again, this is what I mentioned a while ago. No? It is universal, it is inalienable. Everyone has it, regardless of who you are, where you are, or what you have done. Pero merong mga areas that where your human rights are limited because but that must require due process, no? Nabanggit ko rin naman yan kanina. Next, the human rights exist even if the nation isn't a democratic country? Yes. No, there's again, universal ang human rights. That's what they're trying to say. With all these human rights, how come AJK is prevalent in some countries? Well, it's one thing to have human rights. It's another thing to enforce it well, di ba? The duty of the state to protect its citizens, the duty of the state to protect our human rights is their job, and if they were not able to do it, that's when these things happen. No, you have human rights, yes, but it's another thing to protect them, and that is the duty of the state. Okay, so next, can government take away human rights? Pwede bang tanggalin ng government ang human rights? The answer there is no. Sabi natin kanina, it is not granted by any state, so it cannot be revoked by any state, by the government as well, di ba? Sige. Okay, why don't men today have the same right to be protected from abusive women? Yun, the same idea that I told you about, no? Pero there are still laws that will cover men being abused by women, diba? We have our criminal laws already. They are in place, and if you hurt someone, there is a consequence to that. Yun nga lang, the VAUSI is specifically targeting women because again, they are historically the disadvantaged group. Yun lang yung point nun, no? Next, if there are instances of human rights violations inside the church, like killing a person for the purpose of offering, for example, can the state intervene with the church, considering yung I think this is naputol ito, considering yung freedom of religion. Okay, meron tayong tinatawag na freedom to believe and freedom to act on one's belief under Philippine law, no? Freedom to believe is literally anything that you want to believe in. You can believe it, that you can believe in that, no? Pwede mong paniwalaan yan. Pero in this case, ano na siya, magsasacrifice daw ng isang tao for the purpose of religion. Does that cover yung freedom to believe niya? Well, we're talking already of a different concept here. We are talking already here of freedom to act on your belief. Now, this already endangers the life of another person. So that is acting on one's right to life, no? So the state can intervene here. Hindi na yan covered ng freedom of religion because it's already stepping into the rights of another person. Next, is there any violation of human rights in legalizing prostitution? My answer here is so far in the discussions around the world, no, there is none. Pero if the prostitution is used for if prostitution is parang handled by, for example, another person, tas they are being held captives and they have no other choice but to do prostitution or else they will be killed, mga ganyan, that's a human rights violation. But prostitution per se, or engaging in prostitution itself, especially if it's done by the person himself or herself, there's not really a clear violation of human rights in that instance. Next, is it true that not all rights are absolute? Yes. Although inalienable ang human rights, ng isang tao, again, gaya nga na nasabi natin kanina, there are instances that they can be limited, no? Pwede mo silang malimit. For example, kapag nakapatay yung isang tao, you need to curtail his liberty para hindi siya maging dangerous sa society. Na-limit ba yung human rights niya? Yes. But ano bang requirement bago malimit ang rights ng isang tao? There must be due process. Okay? So, next. Should the president be convicted, should be declared guilty in violation of human rights? Where is he going to be jailed? He will be jailed in the Philippines, no? Especially if the prosecution happened in the Philippines. Okay. Siguro at the moment that he is president, he is immune from suits in the Philippines, diba? But afterwards, he can be jailed for violations of human rights if need be. Okay. So next, how can rampant kasi hindi mag-intervene ng international community if we have working justice system in the Philippines. So that's what I can tell you about that. Next, how can rampant disinformation threaten human rights, and what are the existing Philippine laws holding giant social media platforms like Facebook, YouTube, and TikTok accountable and liable for spread of false information? Okay, itong disinformation can really be a threat to a lot of our human rights. Na? For example, our right to information. If you are fed with false information regarding our right to information, well, that's a violation of our human rights, no? And unfortunately, so far, wala pang there are no instances where Facebook, YouTube, and TikTok were held accountable and liable for the spread of this false information. Siguro the thing is, Facebook, YouTube, and TikTok, all of these companies, no, they advocate for one specific human right that we also enjoy, no, the right to free speech, freedom of expression, freedom of speech, no. But they parang, and that includes everyone really, yung freedom of speech of everyone ang sinasabi nilang pinoprotektahan nila. But democracies are crumbling because of these platforms, and I think it's high time that we make them accountable for what they're doing. No? Next, does international human rights really possess universality even though cultural diversity from different nations are present? Well, we can always look at at human rights as parang in a cultural relativistic way, no? Pero I think based on my encounter of yung sa human rights, no? Wala naman I mean, there is little confusion doon regarding dun sa uh, sa cultural setting ng isang bansa. Siguro one thing that is commonly debated as regards yung human rights issue is yung marriage ng mga bata. Child marriage, for example. By child marriage, we mean there are several legal ages in the different countries, but the advocacy of UN, for example, is hindi pwede dapat yung mga bata pa, yung mga sobrang bata pa to be married, mga ganyan. That's where culture comes in, no? In the Philippines, for example, meron child marriages in certain areas of the country, but because of the new anti-child marriage law, wala, hindi na pwede below that age. So, that is parang opposed by several groups and individuals, no, that say na, hey, this is our culture, why are you interfering, ganun. But that is a concern that needs to be addressed. There must be dialogue on this matters. Pero usually naman the Universal Declaration of Human Rights is not really imposing yung mga culturally debatable na mga issues. Okay? Next, what is more important, human rights or human lives? Is it okay that some of the human rights are being violated in order to have safe, secure environment and save more human lives? The thing with this question is that they are ano to this is a common ano ba? This is a common framework of thinking no sa Pilipinas. We're concerned about human lives, so we can sacrifice human rights, no? No, but these are not mutually exclusive things. Yung human rights and human lives. Okay. Human rights, human rights are our rights because we are human, di ba? And human lives are not really detached from the concept of human rights. Hindi mo pwedeng sabihin na, oh, hindi pwede kang mawalan ng right to life because the others are threatened by your presence. Mga ganun. We limit yung human rights ng tao, no? Pero we limit yung human rights ng tao in a certain to the extent that he cannot cause human he cannot step into the human rights of others. Pero it's really a false dichotomy to think na okay, we kill, we sacrifice human rights. No. That's not supposed to happen in the first place the if ano if the systems are in place. If you have a working justice system, why resort to killing, 'di ba? Definitely from the vantage point of human rights, hindi mo dapat kino-compromise 'yon. Human rights are uh, human rights are universal. Human rights are inalienable. They are of paramount importance to others, regardless of who that may be. No? So you mean you'll just kill someone in the name of others who will be spared, parang ganan, because of no, there are other things that you can do. That is this mindset this mindset is what allows for extrajudicial killings, no? Itong mindset na ganito. But human rights and human lives are not mutually exclusive. Hindi dapat sila pinagbabangga in the same in this same plane. Because human lives have human rights and they are and that is inseparable. Okay? So, yun yung sagot natin sa questions na to. I think that's the last one. So, okay, let's try to see dito sa chat kung ano yung mga questions that were raised while I was speaking. Ano lang, before I start reading your questions, ano lang, proof of life, pwedeng mag-on cam at mag-unmute if you want to say anything. Proof of life lang, para lang alam natin na buhay kayo. Hello everyone. Are you okay? Okay naman ba kayo?
Hello, attorney.
Yes po.
Okay lang ba kayo
We're
dyan?
still, we're still listening.
Okay lang po.
This is good kasi nagkakakitaan tayo for at least here, di ba? We are seeing each other's faces. Galing. Technology is really something. Pero technology is also the reason why we can't have good things. Anyway, ayan, it's good to know that you are well. Smile naman dyan, parang ako nakasimangot dyan. Law school is not as serious as you think. Parang hindi siya kasing serious ng iniisip niya, no? Smile naman dyan. Kasi you'll have a lot of time to pout in law school. Marami kayong panahon para magmukmuk sa law school. So this time, let's be happy. No? Ivan, you still there?
Yes, sir. Still here.
Okay, I think this is your time to shine. I asked Ivan last night to prepare a simple message to all of you. Yes, I'm doing that, Ivan. I want Ivan to give you a piece of his mind about what law school is about, kung ano yung what to expect, mga ganyan. Simple lang, Ivan. I know you can do this.
So right now or after you answer the
Yeah, sure.
questions?
Right now.
Okay. Sige. Hello everyone, good evening. I won't take much of your time. I'm currently in my fourth year irregular schooling. Irregular kasi I had to stop for one semester because of the pandemic. So I'm catching up. I'm also a paralegal at the law office. So yeah, the experiences, marami na akong experience in the legal system and stuff. But in regards to law school, as you ponder entering law school, at the top of my head, there are two things that you must consider. Number one is that law school is a great equalizer. I think you have already heard of this. If you watch yung mga interviews ng mga bagong lawyers, the top notchers na nasa YouTube right now. So one of them said that law school is a great equalizer. I'm not saying that being an intellectually great individual will not give you certain advantages. What I'm saying is that maybe being specifically an intellectually great individual may give you certain will not, and parang it will help, but it's not really the be all end all parang qualifier for any law student. That specifically for me, that was an assurance kasi getting into law school was such a culture shock kasi at the first day of class you get, for an entire week, professors assign you so much readings na hindi mo alam kung anong unahin mo. And yun, so just take that in mind. Na huwag kayong kabahan na, oh, maybe I'm not really qualified, no? Because I don't speak good English, I don't read too much. They don't really think about this. I think the most important character for any law student is perseverance. Ayun. Because you can really learn as you go. And then the second thing that I want maybe you could consider is that as you ponder, no, is law school will teach you a new definition of failure. Law school really will it will test your mettle, no. It is not wrong for some to say that law school is not for the weak of heart. Because there will be some instances where you will be mapapahiya talaga kayo sa klase. Totoo yun, yung mga kwento na siguro randomly nababasa niyo sa Facebook, totoo po yun. Me specifically, I remember standing for 2 hours in my persons and family relations law, where we deal with family law and civil law, just because I confused two cases, no, which I think alam naman ni Sir John to. Nakwento ko sa kanya. And also, remember that by definition of failure, I mean that some failures really aren't failures at all. I know I would understand you if you would parang think of it as a failure na, hindi ako nakasagot ng tama this night, or sobrang pahiya mo sa klase na feeling mo gusto mo mag-drop bukas, which in my batch some people did after siguro a month yun, pero nag-drop siya kasi parang dire-diretso siyang hindi nakasagot. So he or she probably gave up. But for those entering, no, just consider there are many definitions of failure, and one of the things that I learned to how to redefine failure is kind of like, think of it as a stepping. So I know this is very cliche, but in law school this would really help you if you think of every single failed recitation, every single failed quiz, and every single failed exam as a stepping stone to something greater. If you watch The Bar Boys, The Bar Boys ba yung title ng movie na yun? Sabi doon, legal knowledge is cumulative. Kasi di ba, spoilers abound, so one of them failed the bar exam, and then parang may nagsabi na, and parang may nagyabang na, I passed the first time. Gano'n. And then yung bumagsak, sabi niya, legal knowledge is cumulative. So just take it easy. Failure isn't really a failure because it sets you up for real success in the future. Remember that you're going to deal with real human lives here, no? You're going to deal with real problems that can affect people's lives and their property and their freedom, no? If you are the individual who will determine whether or not one person will go to jail. You will determine whether or not one person will be liable for something he is not, or he or she is not, no? And so being frontiers, being frontliners in the realm of the legal system, These will be your roles pala. These will be your new roles, no? And so, yeah, as you just you and finally, I want you to take it seriously, no, yung decision you to become a law student. I know, there are some stories you may read na para it is fun. There is fun to it in law school. You will be challenged, really. You will meet good friends. You will meet friends who will yung some experiences in college and high school, yung competitions, so it's so competitive to the point na parang walang magtutulungan. Pero in law school, there's this culture I think that I love the most where they won't mock you for giving a really bad answer. In fact, they will parang one time na experience ko, it was a constitutional class and talagang napaka-terror na judge. It's a Saturday afternoon. Saturday morning, and parang sobrang pagod na kaming lahat. Kasi Monday to Friday, right, diretso yun. And I gave a really bad answer that parang the prof mocked me na parang magtanim na lang ako ng kamote. Ganun. And that was in article 1 pa lang yun. So parang the stink of the the reaction. But after that, parang some of my classmates na hindi ko pa kilala at that time, kasi first few weeks parang niyaya ako somewhere sa cafe, punta kami ng cafe and we talked about it. So you will meet these kinds of people and it can be wholesome as well. So yun, that's law school in a nutshell siguro. There will be a lot of some opportunities pa siguro as the course go on, the programs go on. So yun, I wish you all the best and I hope you decide to enter law school.
Thank you, Ivan, for sharing your story sa mga kasama natin dito ngayon. Yeah, siguro my takeaway from Ivan's case is it really pays to be makapalamukha in law school. Come on, everyone will commit mistakes. Everyone will get a failed recitation. That's not something to worry about. I take recitations as, okay, hindi ako nakasagot ngayon. Okay, next time na lang. Ganun, that's how simple it should be, di ba? And it's not personal. It's nothing personal, really. Siguro mas personal rin pa ng teacher mo pag sinabi mong mali siya, which happened to me. But the thing is, kung mali ka, take it and move on. Makapalan na mukha ang law school. If you are sensitive about your feelings, law school is not for you. You might as well not continue, di ba? And law school is fun. Trust me, it's fun. It's fun to be smart. Alam mo yan? If you are syempre, di ba, if you can talk about things, random things even, in with your friends, mga ganyan, it's a bragging right, no? And take it for what it is. Yun na nga lang ang benefit sa'yo ng law school, di ba? Gamitin mo na rin, no? It pays to be smart. Pero when you're the problem with being smart is the more you're being smart, the more you'll have problems. The more you will appreciate, the more you will understand bigger problems. But that should not stop you from attaining the knowledge that you need, no? For example, some issues in government, for example, will if you're a law student, oh my god, that's textbook violation ng gantong section, ganyan. Pero others don't see that, no? It's bliss for them. Pero sa atin is yung stress ka na bakit why are not making a big deal about this thing? But you know, people will not listen to someone who is angry. Hindi ka papakinggan kapag galit ka. So, do it in such a parang do it in a manner na parang pakwento, ganyan, pero sharing the knowledge that you have, no? Which can be hard. I know that personally. Kasi ako, ganun din ako. But use your knowledge to inspire others, use your knowledge to empower others so that your law school journey will not be put in vain. Yun lang naman. But let's proceed to the questions. Yung ibang questions walang context. And I don't know which part of the discussion this was asked. So I will just answer those na may na may context, no? In what situations can the rights be revoked? Again, limited ha, hindi revoked. When we're, ano mga instances, for example, if you committed a crime, di ba? If you committed a crime, you have, di ba, every person has the right to liberty. May kalayaan maging malaya ang mga tao. You can turn off your cameras again. Mamaya na ulit pag picture taking. No? Yan, may nakamit kang crime. So the state can curtail your right to yung right to liberty. Pero okay. Yun that must have to come to go through due process, diba? In certain instances, for example, the government can take away your property. You have the right to property that is in the Constitution and in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, but that can be limited again because if it's for common good. So those are just a few instances where your rights can be curtailed or limited, no? Clarification regarding prisoners mo. Some were treated as legally dead, depending on the punishment served. I don't understand what is meant by legally dead. But anyway, if he's alive, if a person is alive right now, a moving person, regardless of whether he is declared dead, presumptive dead, or whatever, he has these human rights. Is there a chance that the bill will become a law even if the president vetoed it? When we say veto, ito yung kapag if the president disagrees with the law and does not sign it, di ba? There's another way. There is yung the Congress can override the veto of the president by passing it with 2/3 vote ng lahat ng mga ng buong Congress. So so it can still be passed pero even without the signature of the president, no? Pwede yan. Okay. What happens if inmates are denied of their rights? What can they do to still exercise their right as humans? Yun nga, inherent sa tao ang human rights. And if they are and if they have if their rights are violated, is inside the correctional facility, they have the right to through their counsel to institute a case against the facility, against the one involved, diba? Yun. Okay. As the UN or EU is acting as a policing agency for the countries, can this be still considered harmful to our own sovereignty? How about its effects on human rights? Ideal, if you think about it, no, yung UN or yung European Union, but more on the UN really. Ano lang yan, nakadepende yan sa membership mo doon sa UN, no? You surrender some of your sovereignty to UN in exchange for some protection, no? Pero ano yun hindi higher entity ang UN. It is parang equal lang natin yan. Hindi naman yan harmful sa sovereignty natin if it's not being abusive of its mandate, diba? Kasi signatory naman tayo and we agreed to that basically. So there's really nothing that is supposed to be a threat to our sovereignty. Why is Senator De Lima still in jail, knowing that there's no substantial evidence that can prove she's guilty? Ganito kasi yan. She is charged with a crime that is not bailable. Hindi bailable yung offense niya. So unless and until there's a decision that will absolve her from the case, she'll stay there. However, if the judge, yung mga recent na recantations ng mga testimonies is merely incidental. At the end of the day, it's the judge who will decide if she will be set free or not. Yun, ganun lang yun. Unfortunate for her kasi non-bailable nga yung offense. So, yeah. Okay. You mentioned po that when the Constitution is being revised, kailangan po ng voting ng mass. Sino pong pwedeng bumoto rito? Registered voters only. Yeah, registered voters. In the same manner as a regular voting. Okay, nasagot na yung isa kanina. Should there be any limits to what the government can and cannot do? Of course. Merong limits yan, kaya nga tayo may constitution. We will be discussing that next meeting. Okay. Death penalty and due process of law. Di ba sabi sa Article 1, Article 3, Section 1 is no person shall be deprived of life, liberty, and property without due process of law. So in death penalty, you are depriving a person of his life. And the Constitution has that, no? Pwedeng mo actually impose yan eventually. But because of a law, because of a law during, I think, Gloria, na yung imposition ng death penalty was recanted hanggang sa sa life imprisonment or reclusion perpetua. All judgments of death penalty were reduced to reclusion perpetua. What are the sanctions if the state is found liable for violation of human rights? Sanctions usually merong damages, no? May mga ina-award na damages sa mga victims ng discrimination. For example, there is already a case that was decided, Karen Vertido versus versus the Philippines. May ganun na. May mga damages na ina-award, no? If human rights is granted to all of us, regardless of who and what we are, then why are there still circumstances where government forces people to leave their lands and encourage armed forces to kill innocents? First of all, I will not agree nor disagree to the fact that the armed forces are killing innocents. I have no information about that. Second is, again, the protection of our human rights is really the task of the state. Unfortunately, it is not always. It is not always enforced in the grand manner that we want it to be. No. And what is the difference between constitutional convention and assembly? Just like what I told you a while ago, sa convention, hindi lang siya purely the Congress, but there can be expert that can be invited. Also, it is much harder to pass a constitutional assembly than a constitutional convention. Yan. Is it possible to implement death penalty although it violates the right to life? Yes, it's possible. Contemplated naman yan sa constitution natin. Red tagging. So far sa red tagging, wala pa namang jurisprudence on this, on red tagging. Kasi even the CBP-NPA is not really illegal based on a decision of the Supreme Court. So really, there's this thing about red tagging. It's really illegal, no? Pero there's really not much that has been done to curtail it. Take regarding the shutdown of ABS-CBN in connection to human rights. Some say that it is a curtailment of the right, the freedom of yung mga freedom of expression, freedom of the press to be specific. No? Of course, the only way that we can truly understand, that we can truly determine whether that is a human rights issue or not is if we understand, if we know the reason for the shutdown, the real reason behind the shutdown, no? So I will refrain from giving my opinion on this one. LGBTQA rights, should it be implemented? It is in the Constitution. It is in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, actually. Supposedly, regardless of who you are supposed to be, you are supposed to have human rights, no? And rights specific to LGBTQIA is not a remote possibility, no? Pwedeng magkaroon ng ganun. Abuses regarding the VAUSIL. It's the people again. The laws are just as good as they are drafted. How you use them is a different story. God there. So I will not I will not hold you for long. I will just stay here until 9 as promised. No? If a senior citizen commits a crime, will he or she be put to jail? Is there any right to violate? Okay. There is already. I will not give my own. No. I will not give my own interpretation of this because the court. I don't think it's. I don't know if it's CA or the Supreme Court that said that for humanitarian considerations, a person may not be put in jail. But I think that is weird. But that's as far as I can comment on that one. Pwede po bang tumakbo ang senatorial candidate pag nakakulong po? Watch Bar Boys na lang. Just to give you just to give you a creative way to answer your question. Maganda rin naman that you watch that movie. Okay. If foreigners and citizens both enjoy the Bill of Rights as defined by the Constitution, that means that foreigners who committed a crime within the Philippines will also be punished in accordance to Philippine law. If yes, then why does Joseph Scott Pemberton was deported to the U.S. instead of receiving punishment defined by Philippine law? The Scott Pemberton case is more complex than just this issue, no? Perhaps I can discuss this sa latter part if you'll allow me kasi medyo mahaba yung discussion nito. Kumbaga culmination, this could be a good case study for the culmination, no? Okay, so I think that's as far as the questions go, and if you have other questions, you can post them sa group, and that will give everyone an opportunity to answer, but I can answer them as well. No? Thank you everyone for gracing our event, and I hope to see you in the next weeks. Bye everyone.
Thank you po.
Thank you po,
Thank you, attorney.
If you have if you have screenshots, you can post in your own pages para naman masaya.
Thank you po.
Thank you everyone.
Thank you po.
Thank you,
Thank you po.
Thank you so much.
Thank you po, attorney.
Thank you, attorney.
Thank you, attorney.
Thank you, attorney.